Welcome to the very first video of the build of the BAJA Hobby L39 XXL. And what we're looking at here is the elevator, and boy, look at the shine on that. It is very well done. Anyways, so what we're going to start doing is working on the elevators. And so you get these servo covers, and the servos mount onto those plates. And as I've already attached my L brackets, and so those are going to be attached on the surface like that. And how I'm mounting these is with the servo pocket closer towards the servo horn here. So I'm gonna go ahead and mount the servo and then measure the length of the arms that we have, control rods, and then let you know what the right control rod will be. So first things first, remember this is a very big jet and we do not want to take any chances. So whenever we are securing our fasteners, we need to make sure that all fasteners are of the correct length and that all fasteners also have thread locker correctly applied. And in this case, I'm actually not taking any chances. I'm going to make sure that both the fastener and the receptacle in which it is going into is loaded up with Loctite, and then we're gonna go ahead and secure that onto the servo cover. So I forgot to mention what servos we're using on the tail. So these are the BAJA DS420 HV. I believe they are 42 kilogram servos, and that's what the manufacturer recommends for the tail, and that's what's gonna go in there. We have as our final product a couple of things I'm going to point out. So you can see that my M3 screws are secured with Loctite. You can see a little bit of the color there to the back of the arm there. And I used washers. So these M3 washers did not come with the kit, but I had some laying around, and I just used those because the alignment of this servo, if you look, it's pretty tight against this opening, so there's no room to put like rubber inserts and use that to hold the servo as you usually would. So put washers, tightened all that down, and the servo centered, Loctited the center nut here, a bolt, and then that is all gonna go into the elevator just like that. And when we're gonna screw that down. The kit comes with these wood screws, and so we'll just take 4 of those out and then use those guys to secure the servo and the hatch in place. Final step in the installation of the servo is to install the linkage rod. And so in our kit, we had a selection of rods, and the one that seems to fit best here is the one, let's get the center to center measurement from thread to thread. That looks like about 22 millimeters from thread to thread, and that seems to be the linkage that fits the elevator the best. Servo centered, and the surface itself is fairly flat in terms of the edge of the control surface. So we're just going to attach that and then move on from there. So one more thing to mention is that in your hardware kit, you get these long M3 screws as well as lock nuts and washers on the back, and so those are supposed to be used to secure the linkage to the servo horn and the control surface horn. So all I had to do is widen the hole there a little bit, and that's what we're going to use to attach this guy onto there, because what goes through here is an M3 and those holes are obviously too tiny. So we're going to attach that and come back. It was mounted, Loctited. Servo arm is mounted also. The center screw has been Loctited. Now I drilled these 2 holes here and widened them because the M3 that needs to go through the linkage is wider than obviously the tiny hole on the bottom. So I think we're going to use the top hole on this one. The next thing that I wanted to point out, as always, is finishing installation of this servo requires that I have a harness in here. And the reason for that, like I always mention, is I would prefer, for maintainability purposes, to have this connector right there, so that if a servo needs to be replaced, you just unplug this and plug in a new one. There's plenty of room in this giant plane to coil up this cabling in there. So that's gonna be done. That's done. We're using really good quality AR wire. That's this green, black and white wire. It's thick, good quality, good insulation, and that's what the harness is going to be made of. So at this point, this is pretty much done in here. We're going to screw that back down, finish the installation of our linkage rod, and as you can see, I added a carbon fiber piece in between the two plastic ends, and that again is to just add more rigidity to the linkage rod. So here's our final result. Servo is attached, servo horn is attached to linkage, and you can see the harness that we worked through in here has been snake skinned and heat shrink applied, so that now we have our servo connector that's gonna mate onto the fuselage. So essentially we have a servo connector splice going from this point to in here, which then attaches to the servo, and again, that's for convenience. So if we have to remove the servo, everything is pretty easy to do. There's a clip in there that secures this harness, so you can see it will not just slide out. Servo seems to work just fine as expected. My goodness, this control surface is huge. Look at the size of that thing. That's my arm. It's big. Alright, we're gonna put this away and move on to the next thing. So before I pull away, I want to show one more thing that I want to emphasize. At least it's a tip that I like to use. So when installing the linkage rod and you have ball links, what I like to do is put a washer, as you can see right there, between the M3 screw. And what that does is the ball link, if it tries to slip out, it gets caught by that washer. So even though we expect that the ball link will sit there, if it ever there's no way for this to ever come out unless it breaks, because this washer is not going to allow it to actually move away from the ball link. So you can have it loose in there, but at least you'll still have control. So these are some of the things that I try to keep in mind when I'm building jets, is to stack the deck as much as possible. So instead of just leaving that washer out, stick it in there. It'll help make sure that this guy doesn't actually get a chance to exit or depart. So next up is the rudder servo, and here again, same procedure as we did on the tail. We're going to mount our DS420 HV. Let's see if we can show that over here. There we go, DS420 HV servo, and that's going to get mounted on the tail just like that. And then we are going to get the linkage. Linkage will be one of the longer ones that is available on your kit, and so we'll do the same treatment. We are going to take off the rod, thread everything correctly, and then put a carbon tube around this just to strengthen it. So we'll get that done, and then we'll be back here and show you the result. So the linkage that goes in the rudder is the one that is roughly, let's see here, eye to eye is about 110, 111 millimeters long. So that's the guy we're going to put a carbon tube around, size correctly, and stick it on the rudder. Here's a rudder harness. Again, you can see that I'm using a clip right there to hold the harness in place, and the servo connector comes right up to the top right here. So again, if we need to replace the servo that's in the tail here, not a problem. So we're just going to attach that in there and close this guy up for good. We'll do one test to make sure everything is working as expected and move on. Alright, so everything looks good. Centering is a bit off, but we can fix that later. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with how this came out.